say something to people. You could talk with them. It's good.
Good morning, Ingrid and Graham. Can you hear me? Virginia? Anyone? Sally?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good. That's Graham. Thank you, Graham. I'm just testing. Testing 1, 2, 3. Good. I'm going to mute it again now. But you can unmute yourselves if you need to talk to us. Okay.
Yeah, but then you have to mute yourself after talking.
Yeah, here, this one.
No, people.
Sorry?
How are you, Virginia? You've muted yourself, I think. I think you've muted yourself. Ooh, you've muted yourself again. How are you?
Oh, hold this person in temporary mute. Hello? Hello?
How are you? How are you?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. How are you going?
Yeah, not too bad. Unfortunately, I'm a bit limp today because I hurt my foot yesterday.
Oh, no.
I
Hurt your foot? How?
I bought this bloody bike, you know, a mountain bike.
Yeah.
And I'm pretending I'm 12 years old again.
What, you came off it or?
Oh yeah, I mean, I came off it many times, but I put my foot down too hard on one of the occasions, and I aggravated, you know, that, you know, the plantar fasciitis.
Oh, plantar fasciitis. I've had that. That is so terrible.
Well,
You know what
I've
they
been-
say? Roll your foot over a frozen bottle back and forth to stretch the ligament. You know, like a
okay.
small 600 ml bottle of water,
That
freeze
sounds
it,
good.
then roll your foot back and forth, and you stretch the ligament.
Well, there you go. I knew I was going to talk to the right person at some day. Yeah.
I tell you, I had that for about 18 months. I knew a nurse once that had it in both her feet and she had to retire because she couldn't walk. And you know what?
Really?
It has a life. It
Yeah.
begins and it ends. One day someone said to me, "You're walking without a limp." And I went, "I am." And the pain's gone. It just goes. It's a terrible thing. It is a very painful thing. When you put your foot down, it's like being stabbed in the heel, hey?
Well, I've been working on ladders for a while, you know, I've been renovating a cottage and being on ladders all.
Oh.
Good morning, everyone. Good to see you. Okay, so good morning to everyone online, and here there's 7 have joined me, if my maths is correct. Yes. Same as last Saturday, actually. We're consistent with our numbers so far. Okay, so let's set our motivation for this time together today, tomorrow, being continuing on our conversation, part 2, transforming problems, in the genre of this thought transformation. We're focusing for this weekend on the 8 verses of thought transformation, going through those, and yeah, so that's what we're focusing on. All right, so first of all, just setting your body into a conducive state to engage in listening, contemplating, meditating on this topic. So bringing your body into a conducive state for that. Of course, those at home, your conducive state may be very cozy on the lounge, I'm not sure. In any case, so that we can engage well in listening and reflecting on this topic, so that then when we come back in July, we have a whole weekend of contemplation, of meditation, deepening that, getting it into our, I always like to think DNA, but we don't want it in the DNA because we leave that behind, into our mind, the DNA of the mind, subtle, level. Okay. So first of all, how fantastic that we're still alive. that we're still alive and have this precious human rebirth, which means that we have all the conditions coming together nicely for us right now, despite all, any obstructive conditions or any conditions we had to overcome. The conditions are here right now for us to continue this conversation, engaging in Dharma practice. And not only that, we hear about it and we just want it, desire it. And this is a result of our past merit, countless lifetimes, our past merit of, having made, as a human, stainless prayers to engage in the Dharma again in future lifetimes, just like we make those stainless prayers now, a sense of urgency. And having practiced pure ethics in the context of having taken vows, whatever vows we've taken in past lifetimes, it's got us not only taken the vows, but kept the vows purely. So that we can continue on in this lifetime, and particularly within a Mahayana context, not just for our own sake, but to benefit the world, to benefit all those we encounter. And by a practice of generosity, in particular, the generosity of the Dharma, of giving love, of giving medicine, shelter, food, whatever material supports we've been able to offer others. May we continue that. And even we don't have those things to give, having the mind of generosity is the most important thing, cultivating the 6 perfections, starting with generosity. The mind wishing to give, wishing to benefit. This is the bodhicitta. This is the bodhisattva motivation, is what we're discussing here. How to develop bodhicitta, how to train our mind, transform our mind. So we can think just like the sky, just like the great elements, earth, water, fire, wind. May I always be the means of living and the cause of happiness for sentient beings equaling the limitless sky. So it's a vast motivation to create that spaciousness in our mind, as vast as the sky, and peopling that with sentient beings as vast as space in every atom. May I hold these dear to and precious to my heart and work for their benefit more and more, developing the courageous attitude and practices of the Bodhisattva. So if we think about the 4 great elements, the earth is used by sentient beings to make roads, build factories and houses to live in, as fields to grow crops in, and many other unbelievable ways for the happiness of beings. So pray to be exactly like the earth, solid foundation, reliable, stable, dependent for all sentient beings. It's unbelievable. And then water for drinking, for washing, for sailing, as we say, to the other shore, even for pleasure, swimming and so forth. And we think, if we, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, the benefits of reciting Om Mani Padme Hum, you recite 10 malas, 10 minutes, 10 malas, not much, is it? When you go in the water, and then any being in the water gets blessed, receives those blessings, or just touching your skin, the air that touches your skin. So many ways to benefit others. So may it be just like that for all beings. And then fire, we use to cook, to keep warm. I hope everyone's warm. In the Gompa here, we've got as those of you who've been to the Gompa, which is many of you who are not here, you know that we've got a very big space and we've got 2 heaters here. We sort of tried to huddle them around the chairs so that hopefully people are warm enough. Hopefully everyone's warm enough. Thank you all the beings who provided our warmth to heat cold places and so on. We think of the beings in the cold hells, unbelievable suffering. So, you know, sort of pray to be just like that fire, that warmth for sentient beings, warming their hearts, warming their bodies, warming their minds. And then pray to be exactly like the wind, which we use for air. I mean, for breathing. And so that by our prayers, by our practice, every time we speak and on the breath, you know, we carry blessings. So, for example, Lama Zopa Rinpoche gave us this mantras for protecting ourselves from COVID. And you sort of think about yourself, there's my self-protection, but actually if you think about it and you say that prayer, you say that mantra, Lama Zopa recommends a mala. Because then he says, blow up your nose and eyes. And someone said your ears. I wasn't sure how to do that, so I'll just go like that. I'm not sure. Try and get some mixing in there. But then you can also blow on water for others, you know, just out into the air. Think about these things benefiting others, because that's what, not doubting that, is what cultivates this bodhicitta, this mind of enlightenment. Creates the causes for us to become enlightened, to us to become a Buddha. This is how all the bodhisattvas did in their practice until they got better and better and more power, more and more strength and conviction and so forth, just like that. As Lama Zopa says, when we say, may I always be a means for living and the cause of happiness for all beings, it doesn't mean just when you're feeling okay or when you're in a good mood. All the time, even when you're in a bad mood or depressed or so forth. In fact, this is what His Holiness says, wisely selfish, because you find if you do this when you're in a bad mood, you get into a good mood. So then benefiting you, benefiting others. So in this way, our life, everything we do normally, eating, sleeping, drinking, walking, working, listening to the Dharma, practicing the Dharma, everything becomes practice of the Dharma. And this practice of bodhicitta, the mind cherishing others, the mind wishing to benefit others and thinking like this, totally is counter to our self-cherishing, ego-grasping that we've done since beginningless time, which, you know, as soon as we start to practice, it starts throwing 2-year-old tantrums and kicking and screaming and so forth. We can think, and this is what we're invited to do as we go through these verses, how the selfish mind harms us and harms others, and that we've been doing that lifetime to lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. And cultivating this vast, spacious mind of bodhicitta totally eliminates all of that. Wow. So determined to develop this great attitude of bodhicitta. That's why we're here, right? You've thought, I want that right now. Okay. So holding that in mind, we'll engage in this, looking at these verses. So the 8 verses of thought transformation, if you have our retreat book, it's on page 154. I also sent out a version, which was, I think, the latest version, which is, I think, the one we've got pasted in here, the latest English version that we have. So those of you who have familiarized yourself with these verses over a period of time and looked at different commentaries and so forth, if you have indeed done that or received teachings, you'll know that there's quite a considerable array of translations. And I find that very beneficial for the mind, because when I read the translations and compare and contrast, it enriches, you know, why did they use that particular phraseology? Why, you know, so Lama Zopa Rinpoche has made some changes here. And when it got pasted into our book, I had to go around, well, this book I haven't done, and unpaste it, because I'm always intrigued what's underneath. You know, what am I missing? What's underneath? I know, but I want to know which bit of impermanence is lurking down there. I'm just curious. I like words. You like words. Venerable Wangmo, can I say, writes Dharma poetry. It's lovely. It's fantastic. She hears the teachings and her response is poetry. I think it's a fantastic. I hope I'm not going to burn my lips. Oh, that works.
I like to read with the Shantideva text that we're doing. I've got, I think, 6 translations that I read across. As we
6 translations of Bodhisattva Ways of Life.
And sometimes a paragraph
Venerable
from one
Wangmo's.
translation makes more sense to me than
Yeah,
sometimes
absolutely.
another translation.
Yeah. Okay, so as we go through, just keeping in mind that these 8 verses of thought transformation, this is not just an intellectual exercise. So as we've talked about previously, it's in this genre of lojong, mind training, thought transformation, training the mind, just like we go to the gym. Can we go to the gym in Queensland yet? My friends in New South Wales are racing out to the gym and so excited, you know, I can go to the gym now. Can we go here? Maybe, I think this people gathered here in the Gompa are not gym goers. And nor am I, so I wouldn't know. Good morning, good morning, Ingrid. Sarah. Sarah's going to be with us tomorrow. Yes, some gyms are open. Thanks, Virginia. Virginia goes to the gym. Maybe. I imputed that on her response. So it's not just an intellectual exercise. And again, it's one, these 8 verses are wonderful. They're sort of like, they're very concise, but pretty intense. And you start with one, you go, by the time you get through verse 1 and think, oh yeah, I'll give that one a go. And then you read the next verse and you go, whoa, that's gone too far now. And the next one, too far again. It's just like, indeed. So it is, you know, as we're talking about, when we're talking about the 7-point mind training, just very briefly, Geshe Chekawai's 7-point mind training, which is based on his finding one line in this, which was in verse 5, I offer the victory to them. He just found that. And then he wanted to get the whole teaching. But Geshe Langri Tangpo had passed away, Geshe Langri Tangpo, who composed the 8 verses. And it had been passed on in secret oral transmission to those who these great holy beings could see their minds were ready for it. So this came down from Atisha through Drom Tompa, his heart disciple, down to Geshe Langri Tangpo and so forth. So, and then, so Geshe Chekawa wasn't able to receive the teachings directly from Geshe Langri Tangpo. And I often think about that today, how great fortune we have to, some of us to have actually, you know, met His Holiness the Dalai Lama in terms of being in the same room in teachings, however many thousands of people might have been there with us, our close friends, or maybe some of you were here when His Holiness came in 2011, I'm not sure. And so forth. And of course, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, His Holiness Ling Rinpoche, all of these have given wonderful commentaries on the 8 verses of thought transformation. Geshe, I'm just mentioning the ones I've been looking at. Khensa Rinpoche, Geshe Churni, the abbot of Kopan. For myself, I think from my memory, which is not always very good, my first encounter was His Holiness the Dalai Lama in 1998 gave this teaching in Washington State, I think. Anyway, he gave this teaching. And a friend of mine brought it back from India, the recording, and I played it in my car. I was just trying to think, was it on cassette or was it on CD? So I'm pausing. Whatever. Anyway, I played it in my car as I drove for the next 18 months. And I'd like to say something sank in, but I've got to hear over and over and over and over and over and over again. At least I could say, oh, the 8 verses of Fourth Transformation, I've heard of those. Now, what are they about? And then having had teachings, precious teachings from Lama Zopa Rinpoche, from Geshe Samten, Geshe Sharab, Geshe Tulten Sharab. Remember when we were at Kopan in 2007, he was still the headmaster of the school there at Kopan. and he did this teaching in 1.5 hours, so impressed, just, it's concise. And you can have a very concise teaching, or you can have more and more and more. And of course, Geshe Sultrum has offered it a few times here as well. So it's a very, I think some of us maybe have, had a few teachings from this and transmissions of this. So how very wonderful. So it's all about how, as we said in the motivation, how we can change our basic attitudes, especially about things that currently we find as obstacles to our spiritual practice. And that's why it's so heavy duty. Because, as Lama Zopa says, not just when the going is good, when you're, oh yeah, everything's wonderful, I love all people and I love all beings, until they do something to annoy me. And then all of a sudden, it's not so easy, is it? So this is what this is about. Okay, so, yeah. In fact, it said we don't practice best when everything's going smoothly. And I think that's because we don't see the urgency. We don't have like the people who are like our mirror holding up a reflection, our reflection of our ugliness, and reflecting that back to us. So we don't, because the danger of when things are going smoothly and so forth, ego jumps in so quickly. The self-cherishing mind seems to take us for a ride, 24/7 really, because, we're born with this innate self-grasping, and then on top of that, puffing ourselves up with pride and protection of me and mine and so forth. So it takes a lot of scrubbing our mind to get rid of, these wrong views, these afflictive states of mind and so forth, which as we go through the verses, we'll go in more detail. So it's an invitation to transform our ordinary worldly attitude into a Dharma attitude 24/7, by cultivating a mind, cherishing others more than self. And of course, when we hear that, the poor little, self-cherishing me, ego freaks out. And in fact, it's including ourself. When we say all sentient beings think, I'm a sentient being, I think that includes me. It does include you. So it's not everyone except me. So the whole point of may I cherish others more than self is simply on the basis that we've cherished ourselves more than others, the one me versus the 7.6 or so billion humans, let alone all those in the animal realms, let alone all those in every other realm of existence. I've really been focusing on just this one. So we say, okay, it's a little bit imbalanced to say the least, right? And it's not powerful for our practice, because as long as we focus on one person in our practice, That can benefit one person and maybe trickle out effect. But if we hold all sentient beings, then our mind does become so much more spacious, so much more powerful. We develop huge power and capacity, and that's what we want, you know, Vajrapani, Vajra holder, huge power. So to this end, you know, Lama Atisha composed that refuge and bodhicitta prayer that we say, page 84, if you've got the book. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. So the Buddha, the teachings of the Buddha, and those great holy beings like Geshe Langpa Tangpa, who made these teachings accessible. Not only, thank you very much, Langri Tangpa, not only did you make it accessible, you made it accessible in a very short form that I can, you know, keep in my pocket. It's okay in this pocket. I don't think it's okay in the pocket you sit your bottom on, because then you'd be sitting on the Dharma. I mean, your back pocket wouldn't work, but the pocket at your heart would. I've got one. There somewhere, yeah. Secret nun's business. Got my tissues in there. Okay, thank you, Langri Tangpa. So Langri Tangpa, so those of you, maybe some of you go to Langri Tangpa Centre in Brisbane, so named after Geshe Langri Tangpa. So Langri Tangpa was famously called the grumpy, that he looked grumpy all the time. He didn't smile. He looked grumpy all the time. And there's a story, and I always like to investigate the stories, but I'll tell the story first. Maybe some of you know the story. So the one time he was caught smiling. See, he caught you smiling. So bodhicitta doesn't always come in a nice smiling attitude, clearly. Geshe Langpa Tangpa can tell you that, but what benefit? So he was doing his practice, and on the altar he had his offerings, and including, like, sometimes we have the mandala offering on the altar. And so he saw this mouse come across the altar, and many of us have seen many mice come across the altar. Last time Lama Zopa Rinpoche was here when we had all these tormas for the High Griva. It was elaborate tormas. So they're all like oats and butter and very yummy for mice. Oh, it was just heaven. And we had to put them in plastic tubs every night. They were huge, so we couldn't put them in the fridge. Every night, seal them off from the mice. Because when we're in Bendigo, every day, when we were down there in the last retreat, we were... we'd come in the morning, and the Rinpoche's ritual monks would come in aghast. The tormas had been nibbled away. And it took them hours to make these tormas, so they weren't wanting, they were like, can you cover them over? So anyway, so here he had, just like us, a mouse on the altar. And the mouse was trying to carry off a jewel, you know, got very attracted to the jewel. Would have been very disappointed to find it couldn't eat it. But anyway, got very attracted to a jewel. And it was trying to carry it, but it couldn't, you know. And so it went off. And it came back with 4 of its mates. And the mouse lay down on its back, and the mates rolled this jewel onto its belly and took its arms and legs and dragged it off. So it is said. Well, that caused a mile to arise, the cooperation of these beings, you know. I've never seen mouse do that, but there you go. I think we have to try it with chocolate. They get very good at it, you know. We used to, like, you look under the Tara, you find a stash of the foil. So somehow they've got the foil off and eaten the chocolates. Anyway, do we have any chocolates up there? What was that?
Just got a vision of a little mouse sitting there peeling off the foil. Yeah.
Actually, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, before the Great Stupa in Bendigo was built, when we were in a tent on the site, And there was a mouse that it seemed to come and circumambulate Rinpoche's throne when he was there, which maybe we imputed that on the mouse. But then it came up the steps towards Rinpoche. And Rinpoche got a little bit of food to give to it and threw the food down, but hit it on its head. So the next day was a picture Rinpoche had done of the mouse with a helmet on and a poem. So every day the poem got added to. So we had this ode to the mouse in the spirit of Geshe Langpa Tangpa. Okay. All right. Oh, yes. So I was talking about that prayer. Oh, yeah. The Buddha's Supreme Assembly, by my merits of generosity and so forth, the practice of 6 perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. Now, we say that every day, 3 times in the morning, 3 times at night, if you've taken refuge. We say it in our prayers, and then we get on with our day, isn't it? But it's actually, not just saying the words, but really, how do we make that happen? How do we make becoming a Buddha? Well, we follow the Bodhisattva path, which is just what we're asked to do by following in the footsteps and the advice set out by all these precious Kadampa masters. So, Geshe Lama Drontompa, who started the Kadampa tradition following, Atisha going to Tibet and then Drontompa establishing and so forth, and all these Geshes of the Kadam tradition. And so their practices were very much imbued with the 3 higher trainings, the practice of pure ethics, discipline, and that whatever level, like Drontompa was a lay practitioner, and then the Geshe Langpa Tangpa as a monk and so forth, and Geshe Potawa and all of these are heart disciples. So, holding their pratamoksha vows or vows of individual liberation, which we say are individual liberation, but with the motivation like this to benefit all beings. That's what we do when we take refuge here in a Mahayana context. So like that. Pure ethics, pure discipline. As soon as I say that, I sit up straight, and because we're not supposed to be flapping our arms about as Sangha in case we harm some being, that we can't see because, microscopic beings and so forth, not to harm them, not to agitate them, not to agitate the air around them and so forth. So as soon as I say ethical discipline, I'm like, which is mainly a focus on what we do with our body and what we do with our speech, that it always be engaged with refraining from harm and being of benefit. So they're 2 different things. One is to refrain from harm. That's like minimal. But is it? Because it's so hard. We can wish to refrain from harm, but I have to say, just being alive, I think I'm a danger zone, One time I was came up here, before I lived here, many years ago, I was up here doing a retreat, and I was staying down in Tashi House, downstairs, where Venerable Wongmo, Deb, her previously as Deb, I'm just saying so you get used to the new name, and Venerable Yangchen, previously known as Sky, they're down there in the bottom, and I was down there. What room are you in? In your room?
Oh, the cave.
I was in the cave. Thank you for calling it the cave. That's the room I was in. Anyway, so I get up at the beginning of the day and I go upstairs to get breakfast. I trod on a lizard, little one, and its stomach was hanging out. And it was writhing. So I told myself, because it was writhing, it was still alive. No, it's not. It's in death throes, but your mind goes into denial. Anyway, so pick it up and do mantras. There was no intention to kill it. There was no intention. There was a lack of mindfulness, but no intention to kill. Okay, and then I go into, and then I do practices and, get things off the altar and, blessings and so forth and so forth. Then I pour some water. There's an ant. And I'm like, oh my God, it's only 5 a.m. I'm a danger to the world. I think I should not do another thing today. So we do our best, right? We have the right intention, and then we just do our best that we can, all right? So Lama Zopa Rinpoche taught on this 8 verses, part of the Kadampa teaching. So there's a book on the Kadampa teachings, Lama Yeshe Wisdom Archive book, between 2003, 2007 at Root Institute. Because there they've got all these statues of the Kadampa Geshes, which Rinpoche requested they have there at the centre. And Rinpoche said at the time, seeing these statues inspires you to practice Lam Rim and transform your mind into the path, and particularly to practice this thought transformation, which means using obstacles to practice Dharma. So instead of obstacles come and you run away, you run towards. That's the idea. Like we said last week, you know, Miller Raper with his ear out, you know, just wanting to hear, you know, where there's problems and taking that into the practice. I mean, we want to do the opposite, don't we? I mean, the ordinary mind, the worldly mind wants to do the opposite. So we train to use these undesirable things that we experience. Let's face it, we're going to experience them anyway because stuff happens like that. That's not according to how we want stuff to happen. It happens all the time. We have many opportunities to practice. Okay, so to taking that into the path. So like I've mentioned before, you know, when His Eminence Chodron Rinpoche, previous, you know, now his reincarnation is found. But his, previously when he first came to Australia, it was, you know, when I had just come back from, as I say, prostrating into the dust of the great Mahabodhi stupa at Bodh with community-acquired pneumonia and ended up in hospital. You know, I think I was able to be there for the evening that he arrived. According to Venerable Rabdol, I was quite grey. And she eventually told me to go to the doctor. So I did. I went to hospital and then I couldn't go to the teachings. But anyway, so I'm poor pity me. Rinpoche's teaching on the Geshe Chakwa 7-point mind training. So he said, you know, that was my meditation. That was part of the practice I had to do, meditation. So somebody would bring me from the teachings every day. So, you know, when you're stuck in hospital, you just stick it in your ears. When I was awake, because I was asleep, I think, a lot of the time. And I get upset, people come to visit and they say, oh, we didn't want to wake up. I'm like, wake me, please wake me when you come. My nun friends came and anyway, whatever. I got to go to the teachings maybe 1 or 2 days. Anyway, so whatever. So, of course, his instruction to me was what? Fantastic, better than eons of hot hells. Thank you very much. And I recovered. Wow. And I got to go to Perth and get the teachings at Hayagriva that I missed out at Vajrayana Institute and somehow survived the flight. No, checked with Chodron Rinpoche before. It's very handy to have a lama to say, yeah, you're safe to fly, before the medics tell you you're safe to fly. Anyway, so Geshe Chakwa, as we said, gave the first public teachings on this Lojong mind training, because, you know, up until then, as he discovered, it had been passed on in secret. This is why it got called the leper's Dharma, because he made it accessible to everyone in the spirit of the Buddha, who made all the teachings available to everyone. Well, not all. Tantra was passed on secretly. But for those, I mean, the Buddha was able to teach according to the dispositions of all the beings who were there, just exactly according to their conditions, right? So he was radical of his time. He totally cut through the caste system and the gender bias and everything. I mean, you could say, look at India today, it's still got a lot of all of that. I don't know about still the caste system is quite so strong. I'm not sure.
In some places.
In some places it is. But definitely, well, as we've heard in recent years, the gender thing, you know, so forth, as it is seemingly around the whole world. So it's weird on the basis of a mere body. But anyway, we're working with the mind. So of course, you know, this is all about training the mind, training our attitude, because what goes with us is whatever the subtle imprints on our mind. We want to purify the rubbish of our mind and then get on with the, you know, real stuff. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama, I'm not going to go through every teaching that has ever been given on the 8 verses, but teaching about the 8 verses said it's mainly cultivating this attitude, altruism. And if maybe some of you have read, you know, the very thick book, Venerable Matthieu Ricard, on altruism, which is this practice of bodhicitta. So when I was doing the Cultivating Emotional Balance teacher training with Paul Ekman and Eve Ekman, and Alan Wallace. So what we were looking at was these practices of not just getting the mind to some sort of state of what is conventionally in the world deemed as mental health. In other words, you're pretty balanced, you're not out there, you know, having a psychosis or whatever. You're not clinically depressed and so forth. So whatever we regard as normal in terms of conventional mental health, what the Cultivating Emotional Balance teacher training was doing, and I think we should have a course here again. Corey used to run them, but I think maybe as we start to plan ahead, anyway, discuss that with our program team. Exquisite levels of emotional balance, of cognitive balance, using our wisdom side, of attentional balance. So the practices, you know, that we have through shamatha, these practices for attentional balance. I mean, you know, teachers love for all their kids to have attentional balance and actually pay attention in class. Wouldn't that be great? And then this one, which is called conative, conation. Alan Wallace came and did a presentation on conation at Vajrayana Institute one time, and he wanted that in the title. And Tony Steele, the director, said, I've Googled it. It's one of the 1,000 most obscure words in the English dictionary. I don't think people are going to know what it means. Altruism, we get, right? I mean, Alan Wallace is very, very scholarly. But this conative balance, it's based on the fact that our natural drive is towards happiness and away from suffering, isn't it? Absolutely every single one of us. Human, non-human, same. So that as humans, physically, mentally, emotionally, we're all the same, as His Holiness said. You know, the differences of gender, race, ethnicity, language, culture, secondary, immaterial in terms of training the mind, totally immaterial. So the key to that is how we go about achieving it. How do we realize these aspirations? I mean, even for us here as courageous would-be bodhisattvas, you know, diving into the deep end of the pool of the great scope. Really, it is. And this is why it's so hard. And that's why we should never give up, ever. We just keep plodding away at our practice because it's hard. Because we're going against not only our own, you know, 2-year-old tantrum minds, but we're also going against the main messages we get in the society around us, really, totally. I mean, some of us are going against the dress code too, 2,600-year-old fashion. We sort of stand out in a crowd. It's easy to spot them, spot us. But Who cares?
I have to say, my sister this morning, I came out dressed and she looked at me and she said, I have to go and think about what I'm going to wear today.
Do you hear that? Venerable Wongmo saying her sister is thinking about, her sister's staying with her now at the moment and has to think about what to wear. I mean, we just get up and go, same old, same old. Don't have to worry about your hairstyle. Don't have to worry about your clothes style. It's so convenient, I have to say. That's the whole point of it. So you have more time to benefit others. You don't have to spend that time going to hairdressers and clothing shops. That was the first thing they opened up, wasn't it? Was it clothing shops? Hairdressers. The queue at Nambour. Okay. Plaza Central, whatever it's called. It's a tiny little hairdresser, I admit, but I'm like, I was just walking around and there's this huge queue, and what are they queuing for? To get their haircut. Okay. So I guess we could say all religions, and as His Holiness says, of course, all religions are, concerned with how do we make the mind more peaceful? How do we cultivate love, loving concern, kindness, more moral, truthful lives, meaningful lives, ethical lives. And as His Holiness says, a Dharma practitioner is like a soldier engaged in combat with our inner enemies. So His Holiness, there used to be one little book about inner disarmament, that it's not about trying to get everything else out there to change for me. Look how well that's worked in the world. Zero. It's about changing in here. So how I relate to all of that is different. How do I combat my anger, my pride, my desire for a gorgeous haircut, or substitute whatever. So we have to use wisdom. We have to use concentration. So these two minds that we cultivate in our meditation practice, shamatha and vipassana meditation practice. So these are our weapons for our mind. In fact, maybe some of you have also, Geshe-la was teaching last year on Wheel of Sharp Weapons, and every single one of those 129 verses goes through affliction after affliction and says, butcher them, butcher them. So you Buddhists are supposed to be a peaceful lot, and you're going butcher them, butcher them. But it's like we need strong methods to cut through our own afflictions. Really strong methods, okay? All right, perhaps we should start looking at the actual verses. Why not? Okay, so different versions of the verses as well, of course. So, determined to obtain the greatest possible benefit from all sentient beings who are more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel, I hold them most dear at all time. I'm looking at the previous version to see what we're changed. Instead of I shall hold them is I hold them. I shall, I hold. Sort of brings it into the present moment, right? Which is a good thing. So this is directly nailing on the head our stubborn, self-cherishing mind, right? That, in the same way that we're always controlled by the afflicted states of mind, so are all other sentient beings and wanting happiness, which we've talked about. But this stubborn self-cherishing is like, and this is why we need this sort of butcher. It's like this mind is as hard as wood or hard as concrete, So like that. So we've got to cut through all that. So as Ling Rinpoche said, that sentient beings are more precious or surpass a wish-fulfilling jewel is just an example. So a wish-fulfilling jewel is something, it's like what is it? Aladdin and the genie, and you rub the lamp and your wishes, oh, I don't know, you make your wishes and they come true or whatever, wish fulfilling jewel. So it's just sort of like mythical jewels that are found somewhere in the bottom of the ocean. And then so Apasapa Rinpoche says, then you get this jewel and you fly it on top of a banner. Anyway, so some auspiciousness there in doing that. I can't remember what the auspiciousness is, but the looking for these jewels, I guess we have it in I would say, our culture. And already I feel like I've got a cultural bias when I say our culture. Who am I talking about, you know? But in the culture I was brought up in, you know, treasure hunts. And there was always a treasure chest, fascinatingly, in the bottom of the ocean somewhere, which we never found. But I think there's a wide...
joke lately about the pirates getting all confused with all the crosses all over the ground at the moment for social distancing. You know, X marks the spot.
The pirates getting...
Pirate maps and X marks the spot.
Oh, the pirate maps. X marks the spot where the treasure is.
And now, every time you walk into a supermarket or anywhere, there are crosses all over.
Oh, okay. There's crosses on the supermarket floor where to stand and so forth. Yeah, I suggested we have some in the cafe here, or outside the cafe, or towards the cafe. Social distancing. We did yesterday. We had 20 people join us, which was the maximum we could have in the Gompa. You know, joining us at this point in time in Queensland for Geshe-la's teachings in the morning. Wow! And then people stayed for coffee and cakes. Wonderful. All right. Okay. So anyway, wish fulfilling jewels can only benefit you in this lifetime. So that's why sentient beings are much more powerful than a wish fulfilling jewel, because particularly when they, well, in so many ways, bring us benefit. They benefit us, you know, we are dependent on, as we know, on all sentient beings for absolutely everything, you know, for our houses, for our clothes, for our food, for absolutely everything. So many beings, if we thought about it every time, how many beings gave their life, how many beings, you know, grew the cotton and farmed it, and et cetera, and same with all the food, absolutely everything. It's limitless, and not just this lifetime and past lives. And previously we've done that whole contemplation on the kindness of all our mother sentient beings, our precious kind mothers who've all been our mothers in past lifetimes and are our mothers and will be our mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, etc. Care for us, look after us. We can look after ourselves. So in that way, but you know, they have brought us benefit in past lives up until now, but also by being our, you know, difficult ones that we have to really propel ourselves to practice hard with. In that way, they're also most dear. So in that sense, holding them most dear at all times, because when we look at the 4 opponent powers, when we do our purification practice and we talk about the power of reliance, and it's interesting because we were just at this point, those of us studying I shouldn't say studying for myself, I should just say attending the teachings and listening. But anyway, so the Bodhisattva's way of life, and we were just at this point in chapter 2, the confession prayer, the practice of purification, that part, compassion. When we look at those 4 opponent powers and this one of reliance, and in Bodhisattva's way of life, it mainly focuses on the reliance on Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, which also is often translated as 3 precious gems or 3 jewels. Lama Zopa Rinpoche repeatedly says we have to not translate like that. We have to I'm just checking what we've got here. Doesn't say 3 rare sublime ones, because the jewels, by making that analogy, I mean, of course we think everything most precious, we say our precious teacher, precious guru and so forth, of course the most precious. So in that way they are indeed precious. We rely on them until we become a Buddha ourselves, until we have the realizations ourselves, our own inner refuge. We need the outer refuge, right? 3 precious, rare, sublime ones, because it's so rare in this world. I mean, we say there are Buddhas on every atom of space, but can we see them? You know, a Buddha arising in this world in a form that we can make contact with. Thank you, His Holiness Dalai Lama, all our precious teachers, you know, for our benefit, taking on this clunky human body, subject to all its woes, simply to benefit beings. And so far, so good. I mean, look at how many people tuned in with His Holiness the Dalai Lama when he gave the Chen Rezig Empowerment. 8 million people. And you can debate whether 8 million people actually got that. In other words, understood what was going on and, you know, had a foundation. But that 8 million people run to that, wow, it's amazing. Fantastic. That's the power of YouTube, wasn't it? I think YouTube. Of the Dalai Lama. What's the power of the Dalai Lama? Thank you. It is the power. Funny, power of Dalai Lama. Convenience of YouTube. Channeling the power of the Dalai Lama. We'll get it right. I'll get it right. We'll get it right collaboratively. So we can think about, you know, right now, how on a daily basis,
Unmute you.
Yes, it's on.
Can you hear? That's me talking. Right, that's okay. Yeah, that's because you're getting
That's why.
Just put it on this side.
Over. I'm trying
Just
to.
get all the legs on. She likes the legs on because of the vent.
Yeah. I can just turn your whole phone off. Always works. Okay. Okay. We had a momentary obstacle. We're back. Excellent. Okay. So, yeah, verse 1. All right. So, where was I? Cultivating love, compassion. That's all it is. So by self-cherishing, it's a very limited, Lama Zopa says, tight state of mind. We've got to think about this whenever, we're thinking of just ourselves. We can feel that tightness, can't we, in our mind, or contraction. It literally is. I mean, if you think one person versus limitless beings, of course, it's got to be a more contracted, narrow state of mind. And also, if we check it up, we think I'm extremely important, my desire for things and so forth is the most important. It's all about me. But our self-cherishing mind never makes us happy, ever. You've got to check that up, not just take it as just said. You've got to check up for yourself. And thinking how precious the beings are, all the sentient beings, so precious. Without them, we have absolutely no opportunity to practice generosity, to practice 6 perfections, to practice ethics, to practice patience in particular, maybe patience in particular. And all the other, sort of attributes that we're trying to develop in a, sort of bodhisattva practice to overcome our self-cherishing ego. So they give us the opportunity to smash this self-cherishing mind. So in that way, so precious, so dear. So we need to really, from the very depths of our heart, not just intellectually, but from the depths of our heart, really think, how can I be of maximum benefit to others, like all the time? How can what I say and do benefit others? Focus on others. And then it becomes easy because there's so much, it keeps you busy all day. So Venerable Carson was mentioning when our dear Venerable Dronsel, who passed away nearly a year ago, we're having a 1-year commemorative prayers and celebration of her life here on the 28th of June. We're not sure yet whether we can invite, how many people we can invite. We've applied for a special consideration. In other words, put in a plan, variation plan or whatever it's called to the government. We're not sure how quickly they turn around. So hopefully we can invite you all here for that, but I'm not sure if we can. So we're going to have some prayers here, and then especially in the Nalanda Master's Garden, because she was a great benefactor towards that. I mean, many people contributed, gave a significant contribution towards that, and many other things here. But as Venerable Carson mentioned when he was talking to her in the last months of her life, and she said she made a deliberate intention in that period to not get involved in any negative complaining, whinging of her own, or others, and to only look at the positive, the qualities in others. This is the Bodhisattva attitude, to only do that. And I have to say, having spent quite a lot of time with her in that period, she absolutely did that. In fact, one day I just didn't, unthinkingly, when I gave her a hug and I put my hands on her back, which was all covered in, cancerous sores. And she went, ouch. And I thought, so bad, because I knew that, but you automatically go to hug someone. And it was the only time I did that. Normally I didn't. And another time, she never complained anything about what was going on for her for 1 second, ever. And
It was such a surprise when she died.
that's why Venerable Wong was saying that's why it's such a surprise when she died. Absolutely. No, but yeah, a lot of people didn't know how sick she was. It's absolutely true, She'd be like, I was speaking to one of the students here yesterday, and we'd be like, I know I said every time now when I go, thank you, I'm making you cry, aren't I? No. Well, hopefully, anyway, it's such a beautiful example, because you'd be like, thank you. You can never do so many thank yous as she would do. And you get a text from her, and I can't remember if I've kept the text now, but it was up to some phenomenally close time to her death. And there'd be 2 lines of emojis of flowers and hearts and gorgeous things. It just brought joy to your heart. This is a simple way we can bring joy to people's hearts. It's not hard. We even don't have to change our mind to do that. All we have to do is use the emojis, So it's so wonderful. Thank you, Google, or whoever did the emojis. But it was so true. I remember saying to Venerable Dronsol one day, are you in pain? Because she never talked about pain. She never talked about being in pain. And she said, oh yeah, every bit of my body. Like, matter of fact, like, duh. Yeah, I'm in pain. But never, ever once said anything about that. Only ever. I mean, look what happens when we get the slightest little thing and complain about it, and just sort of think about Johnson, think, zip the lip, So courageous, taking on this suffering. Wonderful. I don't know if people read the testimonial in the Mandala magazine, the last Mandala magazine, but Lama Zopa Rinpoche requested that because he said he wanted, that to be an inspiration towards others, for others, how to practice, So it is a great inspiration. So we can draw on these great inspirations while we draw on the Geshe, Venerable Dronsols and the Geshe Langri Changpos and so forth. I mean, it's good to have somebody amongst our cohort of people, because all these great holy beings of the past, we've sort of got them up on pedestals somewhere very remote in Tibet and so forth. Or even today, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, big throne over here. And you're just like, they're in another realm. Whereas to see somebody who's amongst you really just showing in very ordinary aspect what's possible, it's quite amazing. And this comes to the determined. She had the determination. We have to determine to do this. In other words, set our motivation strongly, having a strong conviction. This is what she had. She made that determination, and not only made it, stuck with it every single day. Never ever, in all the time I knew her, even before she was like in that, sort of phase, palliative phase of her life, ever did I ever hear her complain about anyone or anything at all, ever. It's quite a remarkable being. I remember, you say Dharma practitioner, but I remember an interview with, I think it was in Good Weekend, the wife of Adam Hills, isn't it? The comic Adam Hills, right? This is his wife. Same thing. She said, I never heard him say a bad word about anybody, never heard him complain, ever, anything. And that's his wife. I mean, what I mean is, if anyone's going to hear it, she's going to hear it, right? remarkable beings in the world. I mean, that's so impressive. Here is who is seemingly an ordinary being, being quite profound. So I think we can take that on board ourselves and go, well, I could give it a go. I could give it a go. One of the chaplains for the prison project, she said to me one day, she said, I've made a decision. I'm not going to complain anymore. I haven't checked up with her how it's going. That was a few years ago. I said, how did that go? But we make that decision again and again and again and again. When we fall down, we get up. Fall down, get up. Again and again. This is what all the bodhisattvas of the past have done. We talked about Vajrasattva when he broke all the vows and did everything wrong, and that's why he vowed to be the one to help beings, purify all their negative karma, purify any broken vows, restore their vows, and so forth and so forth. So determined, really strong conviction. And the strong conviction, just like the Kadampa masters did, strong ethics, strong discipline, sitting up straight again. And being prepared, having the courage to be prepared to be out of step with others, out of step with the main drives in society, or what people around us might consider as the most important thing in their life. I mean, I'm pretty sure I've got people in my life who sort of pity me a bit, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I hope not, but, I'm thinking of maybe I've got some family members who might think, oh, poor her, she's poor. Poor her, she's poor. No need for pity. Doing just fine. Actually, I feel guilty that we, in a way, I can't help it, Catholic guilt, what can you say? It's still with me after all these years. I know we're not supposed to have guilt, we're supposed to have regret. But feeling like, oh, here we've had these wonderful conditions during this whole, coronavirus pandemic in the world. And I look at other places in the world and I go, well, you just have to rejoice in the conditions you have and make the most of it and think more determined to benefit others, because for now, healthy, physically and, working on the mental, but reasonably healthy mentally. All of us here, we don't know how long that will last. We really don't know how long that will last. So, okay. And taking the greatest possible benefit we can gain from all sentient beings is our own Buddhahood. That is the greatest possible benefit. And it's the other sentient beings, this other arm of reliance. So Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the three rare sublime ones, our reliance on, the outer objects of refuge until we have those realizations directly ourselves. In other words, until we are ourselves Buddhas. But it's on the basis of other sentient beings who give us the opportunities to practice, to get us there, to become Buddhas ourselves. So not just because they provide all the resources of this life, but that helps. And you'd say the fact that we have the resources to do that, the fact that we even have the luxury to spend this time doing this, contemplating, wishing to transform our minds, is from past merit that we've accumulated. So this is the bodhisattva path of the accumulation of vast merit, as vast as possible. So the more that we hold more sentient beings more often in our mind and wish to benefit them, huge more merit than just focusing on ourselves. Even we're being virtuous, just focusing on ourselves is a rather limited capacity to develop our mind, extremely limited. So, and then from all sentient beings, and there are other translations that say for all sentient beings, and both works. We say from sentient beings because it's on independence on those that we develop this mind of enlightenment, this based on great compassion, based on compassion, based on loving kindness, wishing others to have every happiness, every joy, everything their hearts desire, everything they desire and need. And it's okay for their temporal needs. Lovey Ashi would cook up a storm for, you know, what is it? We give them food first and then gotcha. In a very nice way. In a very nice way. So people are welcome to come here and go for a walk and enjoy the walk, the coffee, the cake. And then why not make it to the Gompa? If not, they'll see many holy objects along the way. So good. Whatever it takes. Okay. So it's both for and from. It's from those, but it's also for them. Because why do we want to become a Buddha? So we can hang up a shingle. Hi, I'm Buddha Turkey. Well, believe me, I'm not. No, of course not. It's because then we have the qualities of a Buddha to know exactly where all these sentient beings are coming from, know exactly the disposition, the tendencies, the interests of their mind, their capacity. We know exactly how to help them. And what's the only way a Buddha can actually help others? Is teaching, is giving the Dharma. Not necessarily teaching by sitting on a throne and giving, and it's not an academic thing or whatever, or, there are our, of course, the Dalai Lama does that, Lama Zopa does that. I mean, I can't keep up with all of these teachings that are coming, zoom, 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 every day. It's amazing in the world how the Dharma wheel is being turned. It seems to be a great rate of knots, which is fantastic. So that is, but there are many forms to benefit others. As a Buddha can be a bridge, a Buddha can be a boat, a Buddha can, whatever's needed by beings, whatever is needed. Okay. So it's from them, and then to benefit them, it's sort of like, it's not like you get to Buddhahood, job done. It's like you get to Buddhahood, job starts. Isn't it? Right, now go for it. Until all beings in the world themselves are enlightened, until all beings have freed their minds of all the afflicted states and so forth. A Buddha's job's never done. So way to go, just look at the world. There's a lot of work to be done in the world. We up for it? Oh, not quite yet. We have to say that.
In training.
In training. Put it this way. You haven't left yet. Has anyone left there? Anyway, we made a commitment, as Geshe was saying during the week in the teachings, just to remind our Sangha members. He said, you lay people don't have to worry about this. He said, you've given your life to sentient beings, so, that's your job. Every moment. Didn't he? Is that what you heard? That's what I heard.
Yes.
Yes, more or less. There was a few other details. There were a few more details, but that was basically it. He said, what I'm saying may be hard to hear. It's only hard to hear for the self-cherishing ego. Okay. So at the beginning, we say the words, and we attune our mind to the concepts, to the idea. Oh, let's even contemplate the idea of being benefit to others. As I was saying previously, when Venerable Churni, senior nun, preparing me for ordination, or at least she was the first one I spoke to about it. I mean, when I got serious about it, she was the one I first spoke to about it. And so because you're preparing for ordination, I was thinking, funnily enough, about me in checking it out, because I'm like, sometime in the future, you know, sometime in the future.
Next life, I was thinking.
Thank you. Venerable Wongma said she was thinking about next life. She was so wrong. But as Venerable Choni said to me, you don't want to, you know, I'm thinking sometime in the future. And she said, you don't want to wait till you're too old to be a benefit to others. Oh, benefit others. That's an idea. Wow. I mean, I thank her so much for those words, because then I could focus on, no, the benefit of others, the benefit of others. Just train the mind in the words, in the concepts. And then we develop our capacity to put that into practice. You know, we say our motivation every day, but then we say it. And throughout the day, when we forget, when the self-cherishing mind arises again and again, you know, we're able to cultivate a more courageous mind. And the more we do it, just like any other habit, we get good at it. The more you do it, the more you get good at it. Okay, and then the more we can do, the more we can start to think, oh, engaging, now what is it I'm supposed to do? Oh yes, practice generosity. Oh, how am I doing that? It doesn't mean give away all your worldly possessions, although if you're ordained, way to go, can help. It doesn't mean it's the, as Venerable Thubten says, the mind of relinquishment, of letting go of that. And there can be such little ways, minuscule ways, but that can be of benefit to others. I was thinking of just one way, which was the other day in it was a discussion group and my cup of tea was down there. So I couldn't see where I'd left it, but I knew my tea was there somewhere. I had to relinquish it. And that's okay. I usually relinquish my cups of tea because they get cold before I drink them all. Speaking of which, we're going to have one soon. Oh gosh, I think we're sort of, we'll get to the end of the first verse. We got a weekend. Well, not all weekend. Okay. All right. So engaging in the practice of the 6 perfections. First of all, familiarizing with those as we, you know, had a weekend. It was the previous module, wasn't it? Yeah. Yes, previous module we did a weekend, 6 perfections. We practiced the 7-point mind training, which we talked about the last weekend. 7-point cause and effect mind training. This is different to the Geshe Chekowa's 7-point mind training. So Arya Sanga's 7-point cause and effect, you know, on the basis of a mind of equanimity regarding all beings as equal in what way? They want to be happy. They don't want to suffer. And this is what we're saying, you know, working for their happiness. It's okay, the temporary happiness, giving them food, giving them so forth. But what's really going to benefit beings is what imprints we can help them to place on their minds, provide the opportunity for them to place on their mind without never ever necessarily saying the word Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Necessarily. I mean, for those that are interested, go for it. But, you know, people like the mantras, actually. But I used to go to, occasionally anyway, before I trained in particular more, near where Vajrayana Institute was in Sydney at that time, in Newtown on King Street, there were a couple of vegetarian something palace, green palace, something like that. Anyway, we'd go there and it was delight because you'd walk in and they'd be playing Om Mani Padme Hum all the time on the CD or on the, you know, the music was Om Mani Padme Hum. Easy. Nobody ever complained. Nobody ever said, could you turn that off? I mean, sometimes you go into places, well, I haven't noted in the Sunshine Coast, but then I haven't been to many places where they have very loud music and you say, please, can you turn that off? We want to actually talk to each other. But, I mean, maybe those places exist here. I just don't go there. I'm not sure. And nobody's been anywhere for a while. Anyway, so, you know, just things like that. You know, one of our students at Vajrayana Institute, so she was in the police force. She was the police commandant, Newtown Police. which meant Newtown, Marrickville and somewhere else in that area. And she put a Buddha statue on the desk at Marrickville Police Station. She was the commandant, so they couldn't say, you can't do that. She was the boss. I don't know if it's still there. Maybe I should go back and say, where is it? Anyway, so she started very frequently coming to the centre after she was medically retired. And I think she was only in her 40s, I think. Anyway, she had cancer as well. When she went into hospital, no, before she went into, I mean, she was in and out of hospital, but when she was at home, she used to play very loudly mantras in her backyard for all the animals. I don't know what the neighbours thought. I mean, maybe the neighbours were out at work during the day. Anyway, she didn't have complaining neighbours, so maybe they were away. But anyway, so she played it for all the animals. She didn't do that in the hospital. But what she said when she was in the hospital, when the cancer got into her spine, so it's very painful. And they were giving her morphine. One day I went to see her and she had her bags packed on the side of the bed to escape Alcatraz. And she decided that wasn't a good look. And so she said, no more drugs. I'd rather have a clear mind. She wanted to be able to work with her mind rather than worry about physical pain. Pretty courageous mind, isn't it? Pretty, and she'd only been around the Dharma a couple of years, but very courageous. She was very determined. Vicky, I don't know where she is now. She passed away in 2008. End of 2008, we had 3 students who passed away at the centre in about a week of each other. Anyway, they got the prayers straight away. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, all the nunneries like we're doing. Tomorrow we're doing this. I was thinking we're going to do it today, but somebody's requested Zambala Puja. So Lama Zopa is giving us, Lama Zopa via Geshe Sutra has given us the instruction to do pujas for our fellow students and when they want. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, somebody emailed us just on the basis, without even knowing that, because it's not on the website, So this is just synchronicity.
Word just gone out.
Well, I don't know.
No.
Timing, synchronicity, somebody contacted us. I'm overseas. Does that qualify? Of course, you can be anywhere. You're alive in the world and able to email. That's all it needs. Anyway, okay. All right. So developing this mind, impartial mind. So at the moment, our mind is so partial, discriminatory, isn't it? It hasn't got this mind of equanimity, even-mindedness. This is what we have talked about in the previous weekend in more length, more detail. To cherish all sentient beings without exception, So as Langri Tampa said, we should, this is developing this special attitude. Because again, it's not the attitude that's rampant in the world to regard all beings as equal. Even people get to regard all human beings with great respect and high regard. When it comes to animals, do they feel the same way? Including the insects. The insects are in the animal realm, right? People say animals and then insects like it's some separate category, but I don't know why. I don't understand it. Maybe there's a reason. Maybe it's because there's so many ruddy insects.
Yes, or they're often referred to as the other 99%.
The other 99% of the animal realm is the insects. Yeah, just the ants, isn't it? That might be just the ants. All right. All of them. Most precious, most dear at all times. Now that's a pretty high bar, isn't it? Very high bar. So we do our best. We do it. The more we're able to do it, the more we're able to do it. The more we even think to do it, the more we're able to do it. Or the more we think to do it, the more we think to do it. So it's just wherever we're up to. This is not to beat ourselves for when we aren't in that category, because this is it's our innate. impulse to protect ourselves. And we need to protect ourselves. We need to stay alive so we can benefit others. That's the whole point, isn't it? That's our whole point. It's the only reason we're alive is to be a benefit to others. Think it like that. The only purpose in life is to benefit others. Then our mind changes. Then when the opportunities come, we don't freak out. We may not rejoice. I mean, Lama Zopa says rejoice, and of course all the precious lamas can rejoice spontaneously. But, you know, we may say, okay, gritted teeth, here's an opportunity for practice. That's okay. That's not even okay. That's fantastic. So we rejoice in that we even notice that, because it strengthens this mind muscle. You know, it's like the psoas of the mind. It's quite good, isn't it?
Fantastic.
Psoas of the mind. Venerable Yangshan likes that. I think we better take a break and exercise the psoas of the body. So we will take a break till 11, I think. That worked last time? Yes. Definitely back at 11. So we're going to go for coffee and cake. So those on Zoom, stay on Zoom. I think, can they unmute themselves now and chat amongst themselves, or do I have to unmute them? Oh no, Leonie, you should be able to unmute yourself and chat amongst yourselves if you want to have a chat together. And when we come back, we'll just see before we proceed any questions or points of discussion, then we'll just kick back in. Okay, folks? Thumbs up. Is anybody there? Any thumbs up coming? They've already gone. Yes, thank you, Virginia. Yay, Eva, got it. Okay, see you soon. Probably already off boiling the kettle.
I wanted to check what you had said. You said you had, should we mute that for a sec, or just that red button? The red
That might help. Okay, we all back? We're back here physically in the room. So I haven't got the mute on here, but I'm not getting an echo. Is that okay? Or is somebody else getting an echo?
Sorry, which one's not on?
So that one's on, right? I press that.
Yeah, so we'll put the mute back on here for somehow I might have.
Take.
Okay, so let's try. That's what we tried last time and it
Yeah, I
didn't
know.
work.
So you can't hear anything.
I can hear you now, Chalky.
Okay, so
Can you
maybe.
hear now?
Okay.
Are you getting
I
a,
can hear
thanks
now.
Tim,
I can
are
hear
you
now.
getting background sound as well?
I can't pick any background sound up from here. But
I mean,
know
are
that
you getting echo from YouTube or anything like that?
I'm not at the moment, no.
Oh, well, we'll go with this. Okay.
That's okay.
There could be something in the background from somewhere, yes, but it's not too much.
Okay. There's the YouTube. Yeah. Ross, are you getting a delay from the YouTube? In which case, maybe maybe turn one of them off. Just use one of them.
Yes, maybe not have both running at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, it is always a delay. So decide which one you're on. Because other people aren't getting a delay on the Zoom. Okay. All righty. So try. Beautiful. So second verse, we're up to verse 2. Where are my verses? Wherever I am and whoever I'm with, I always consider myself the lowest of all, and from the depths of my heart, hold others dear and supreme. So, of course, we hear this and we don't want to mishear it. So it's easy to mishear this holding myself, the lowest of all, as an invitation for our neurotic ego to tap into low self-esteem. This is not what it's about. This is not being a doormat. This is not literally, I'm the lowest of all, I'm the most pitiful being in the world and so forth. We've also been practicing that since beginningless time, and we're very good at that. So it's definitely not what this is meaning, because that attitude is counter to a bodhisattva practice. So it would be senseless. In fact, Lama Yeshe says it's the most disgusting form of laziness, where we say, oh, I can't do it. It's too hard, or that's a dangerous mind, or I can't do it because I'm not good enough. And we can always think of reasons why I'm not good enough. You know, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama, when he first met with the scientists. In fact, before I go on, I did want to make an announcement that today at 12:30, those of us who are here, if you want to stay, like it's a wet day anyway, so we're convenient for us not to be sitting outdoors in the rain having lunch. We'll be here and pop up the screen, and Sunny will come up and fix it up. So we'll be watching the Dalai Lama from 12:30 to 1:30 if people want to join in for that, with the Mind and Life Institute. So with Richie Davidson and Susan Bauer from the Mind and Life Institute, and Tubten Jimpa as the translator. And there's another woman who I can't remember the name of because I didn't, it wasn't someone I was familiar with, also from the Mind and Life Institute. So in conversation about compassion, just this topic, compassion and science and healing the world. No small effort there. So it's a bodhisattva practice. Anyway, so if you wish to, I'm just letting people know it's online, dalailama.com. And I think next weekend we've got another teaching with His Holiness. Maybe it's on Friday. Anyway, I'll have a look. Yeah, I think it's on Friday. Okay, so what were we talking about? Yes, thank you for the link for His Holiness. It's also, you can go to, I sent it in the email for those who had the email, dalailama.com/live. So it's in a few different places, also on the Mind and Life Institute. So His Holiness has been having these meetings since the mid-80s at least, with scientists in different, particularly mind scientists and neuroscientists and so forth, the science of the mind, and psychologists and so forth and so forth. So at this meeting way back, His Holiness was there, and one of these scientists, top people in the world, and was talking about low self-esteem, and there's not a word in Tibetan for that. Maybe there is now. That would be tragic if there was. And so it took a while for the translator, this was very early on, to be able to find the word in Tibetan so His Holiness understood what the word was. And so when that translation happened, His Holiness threw his robes over his head and cried. No, he didn't cry yet. He asked everybody else, who else suffers this low self-esteem? And all these top scientists put up their hands. And that's when he cried. He said, why would we human beings do this to ourselves? Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It is counter to ourselves. It puts us down, disempowers us. And then we say we can't. And indeed, in that mode, we can't do a whole bunch of stuff. So this is not what it's about. This is about definitely targeting this, the ego. Rather, yes, target the one ego, the pride, putting oneself higher. So we do this flip thing. We're either higher than everybody else or we're lower. Superior inferiority complex we have, both, So we flip-flop between the two. So it's to counter that mind. Because on the superiority side, going on with the thing where we discriminate and put into categories. You're my friend because you've been nice to me. I don't like you because you're not being nice to me, or you were nice to me and now you're not, so you're off the friend list. And everybody else, well, you neither help nor hinder, so I don't care. A Buddha, regardless of whether people help or hinder or any being, equally has regard for all. So if we want to be a Buddha, we want to do what the Buddha did. So this is the training. So the training is in this humility, the humility that is not putting yourself down. The humility is not that counters our pride and looks at the positive qualities in others, because we've spent so much of our time looking at the faults in others. Something's wrong, it's you. Isn't it? Automatically. That's it in a nutshell. Something's wrong and you've got to change it. I mean, we can't change our own, we can change our own minds, which I'm all about, but we find it hard to change our own minds. And yet we're saying to others, you've got to change because, you know, I don't want to. I don't want to. You've got to come around to my point of view. As Lama Yeshe said, we've all got our own universe. We're all in our own travel bubble, non-travel bubble, ISO bubble. Speaking which, Leonie in the break was talking about, I don't know, people who've been following Lama Zopa Rinpoche's teachings online. Rinpoche has renamed this pandemic, transformed it. This is where we transform our mind into a pandemic of compassion. Coronavirus. Hey, just like we talk about our compassionate distancing, we reframed the social distancing, compassionate distancing. We now have coronavirus. Apparently, if people were watching, I haven't caught up with that one, that Rinpoche said it 2 days ago. Rinpoche said over and over again, coronavirus, because, you know, the joy when Rinpoche finds these. Coronavirus. Is that Jill? So Venerable Jill Conchog, who doesn't like to be called Venerable, I hope she's not listening, has been calling it coronavirus from the very beginning because she's deaf. I think she heard it right. I think she got the transmission. Okay, so that's the intent of this, so that we're practicing looking at the positive qualities of others. And so, you know, going back to the ants. The ants get a lot of chat because it's been raining and they come inside when it rains. They come inside more because, just like us, we want to be inside. So, okay, the ants are my problem. So that's the self-cherishing mind. The ants are my problem. Okay, but if I think about ants, they have very simple minds. In other words, they don't appear to contrive and deceive and make life complicated. And I mean, maybe they do discriminate. Maybe they have friends and enemies. I'm not sure. They probably do for survival.
They hang out in big groups.
They do hang out in big groups. They're big communities and they seem to collaborate, as I've observed in my bathroom. You know, when I plug up that hole. And it was so fascinating to watch them. Plugged up the hole. And then I was trying to get them, I was trying to negotiate, you know, between you can have the bathroom sink or the kitchen sink, but not both, you know, and then trying to do so, all the things that we try and do to keep them from coming into either. Anyway, there they were. And so I plugged up this one hole where I found their entry hole, plugged it up, teeny tiny hole. And so I saw others who'd found a new hole and they came back when their mates were going to the one I'd plugged up, you could see them come back and say, oh no, she's plugged it up. Got to go this way now. It was so delightful to watch and see the ants helping each other, you know, very uncontrived. So in this way, we look at the qualities of others, you know, their positive qualities, and whatever the being is, whether it's an ant, whether it's a human, whatever. I mean, if you think about it, we as human beings have, you know, we have, and especially as Dharma practitioners, we have infinite capacity to cultivate these virtuous qualities, because the qualities are infinite. We talk about the immeasurable forethoughts, but in fact, all these positive qualities are immeasurable, and we cultivate those for the benefit of immeasurable beings. So as a human being, I've got more responsibility because I know right from wrong. I know about ethics. I know about, you know, what I should do and what I shouldn't do, and even more as a Dharma practitioner. Supposed Dharma practitioner with vows. Thank you for the protection of vows. And so a so-called sophisticated mind, I have the capacity I have the ability to use that in the right way. But look in the world of how much huge capacity we have to use what could be beneficial in a destructive way, like nuclear energy or whatever, you know. It's quite fascinating, you know, Aboriginal people, you know, when they were, whoever it was who said they discovered uranium. I don't know when they discovered uranium, but Aboriginal people knew it was there in the ground. They called it the big poison, and they thought if you leave it in the ground, it won't do harm. See? So the wrong views that associate with that, and then they say, oh, there's a buck to be made here, or whatever, you know. So we are all complicit in these, and we think, well, that ant hasn't got that complicated mind that I have. It doesn't have the, I haven't studied ants. I don't know if they have a mind of jealousy. I think the bush turkeys definitely have that one.
Mm-hmm. It makes them unkind to each other.
They are unkind to each other and to smaller birds. And you give them a talking to and they just don't take any notice. But they are, yeah, I need a translator. Would you be my translator, Venerable Wangwa? Anyway, so I just keep giving them blessed food and Om Mani Padme Hongs and whatever. At least they're in a Dharma center, I think. Well, the thing, you had the virtue to be, be reborn as a protected animal. If you're going to be born a bird through attachment, peck, 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 attachment. Then being born in the Dharma center. So there's some virtue there, right? Environmental karma is very good. So, but if I use all my capacities in the wrong way, I'm no better. I'm actually worse than the ant, than the fly, than the bush turkey, because I know better. So we can train our mind like this when we're thinking about this. And also, we can think about Geshe, Khenso Rinpoche Geshe Cherny, who's the current abbot at Kopan Monastery and also teaches at least in Singapore and Malaysia at the centres there. He said, also, you cultivate this mind of, we say, pure perception. So this is focusing on the positive qualities of others. This is what a Buddha does. A Buddha doesn't sit there judging and saying, oh, you're no better than an ant or whatever. I mean, the Dalai Lama reminds us, look, no claws, no fangs. We're not made to rip each other apart as human beings. We're made to love, soft hands. We're made to embrace, just not at the moment. Unless you're a family, unless you're family. But, you know, the rest of us, air hugs. So we're not, you know, as His Holiness says, elevate yourself above the animal realm. In other words, use your intelligence. because we can. So this is our responsibility. So how can we criticize that in others? So developing this pure perception of not focusing on the faults, but focusing on the good qualities. So this is what the challenge is here. So for on one level, we have no idea who's a Buddha. You know, we say to not draw blood with malicious intent from a Buddha. I mean, safest bet, hands off all animals with malicious intent to draw blood. Okay, I drew blood of the lizard for sure, but it wasn't in any intent to do that, let alone malicious. And then at least I did the regret thing and you know, sort of some sort of remedial action as it was in its death throes to get some hopefully imprints in there. So we
Most lizards will get.
More than most lizards will get. Yeah, they get eaten alive by snakes,
Oh,
butcher birds. See? The poor things creating negative karma that they don't know they're creating. At least we can help them along the way. So pure perception that sees their good qualities, focuses on their good qualities. And we have to think about, why is it I'm doing that? It's not that I'm sitting in judgment of whether they have good qualities or not. It's I'm training my mind on the Bodhisattva path. And that's what we have to keep in mind. I'm training my mind to cherish others. So I have to counter the mind that wants to find fault, the mind that wants to discriminate, to develop this, not just the mind of equanimity, of equal regard for all, hard enough, but on top of that, loving concern and appreciation and respect for all life. Because why? Any being with a mind, Semchen, mind possessor, any being with a mind has Buddha nature, is a potential Buddha. And if I'm saying I've become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings without exception, the bush turkeys are my current OCs, objects of compassion. No, they really are, because I really look for the positive qualities. I mean, I have to focus on, you've been born a protected species, you are living in a Dharma center, you're surrounded by Sangha, there's got to be something good going on there, and you're still alive. Anyway, I don't know the life of bush turkeys, but I'm sure Venerable Wangmo will fill me in with details later. You had your hand up.
I had a question, but in terms of focusing on faults, and it's not really focusing, but I think we have to, like, if I see a fault in someone, say they're greedy, I look at someone and say, gee, you're greedy. And that instant, well, not instantly, I have to think it through so it's not automatic. I just, they're suffering because of that, and I have to acknowledge their suffering, and compassion then kicks in and you say, you know, I want to relieve you of your suffering. So if you don't identify the faults in some way, you have to acknowledge them.
Okay, so Venerable Wangmo is using an example. I'll repeat it for those of you at home. So she's using the example of, like, if she sees somebody greedy with attachment, let's say food, it's a big attachment. We all like food, and we all like our food to be very, very nice, isn't it? I'm always so fascinated, us human beings. We must have the most diverse diet in the whole of the universe. It has to be, isn't it? I mean, the cows just munch grass. I mean, maybe they get, I don't know, different forms of grass and get excited, I don't know. But they just, grass is it, right? Oh, we've got to have it with, you know, double choc and whatever on the side. I mean, just the variety of herbal teas we have. I don't know much herbals in there, actually. We have so many exotic teas and coffees and chocolates and everything. Everyone's, you know, all these chefs obsessed with coming up with new tastes. Lama Zopa Rinpoche says we've tasted everything there is to be tasted. There are no new experiences in samsara. There's only the mind of attachment, that the mind of desire that wants to create more. So in that way, I can look at all these animals and say, actually, you might be greedy, but it doesn't, I mean, the bush turkeys don't seem to discriminate too much with what I give them. I mean, they will. If I don't give them another thing, they'll happily, well, I guess it's apple cores today or those pellets. They like that. They like those pellets. Did you give me those pellets? Or yeah. Anyway, I still got an ice cream container full of pellets because they get fed so many other scraps. But they don't seem to say, oh, excuse me, I'm not eating that. You know, they don't do that. We do. So, you know, I can have that as a good quality. You might say it comes from a mind of greed, but, and this was the point Venerable Wangmo was saying, by identifying and being able to observe the mind of greed for the benefit of that being, may they be relieved of that suffering. So for sure, the mind of compassion, may you be relieved of that suffering of greed. And why can we do that? Because we absolutely know the mind of greed.
We know the mind of greed.
We know the mind of greed. So it's sort of like they're reflecting our own greed. I mean, desire, attachment, and then out of whack into addiction is the single most dangerous affliction we have. I mean, yeah, if we cut the root ignorance, we cut the lot. But in terms of what propels our every living moment, it's attachment, nice sounds, nice smells, nice taste, nice touch, nice, more, bigger, better, more often. So then we have sensory overload and collapse in a heap at the end of the day. Not satisfied, dissatisfied. Anyway, so the pure perception, okay. So we don't know who's a Buddha. We don't know who's a Bodhisattva. So we want to become like a Buddha. We want to become like a Bodhisattva. We certainly don't want to, you know, kill an Arya being or draw blood from a Buddha. So just, you know, at least hands off. But we aren't able to do harm. So in the same way, we cultivate this view for our teachers as Buddha and don't focus on their faults because you think, well, out of great kindness for me as a human being, they manifest faults for my benefit. Because if they didn't manifest these faults, me as a human being couldn't even probably see them, let alone cope, because it'd be like too otherworldly. I mean, these beings are rarefied, you know. His Holiness Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Now, when Lama Zopa Rinpoche manifested stroke down there in Bendigo, what year was that? 2011? Was that 2011 as well? It was. His Holiness was in the country because I remember the manager of the Dalai Lama in Australia at the time, His Holiness, they said, oh, maybe we can fly His Holiness to see Lama Zopa or whatever. Oh, our dear precious most bush turkey, could you escort it out? Yeah, I know, but he's ignoring it. No, but he's ignoring it. No, yeah. Thank you. Have to keep the door closed. We have to keep the door closed, otherwise the bush turkey. The bush turkey joined us last week. See how keen they are for the Dharma? See? Practice pure perception. Actually, they're rather attracted by the food, but you use skillful means, whatever it takes. So we cultivate this attitude of seeing others as pure, right? And show respect to them with our body, speech, and mind. So we greet everyone who comes in as if we were greeting. I remember hearing this in Foundation, FPMT Foundation Training 101 in New Zealand, 2006. I did that. Greet everyone who comes to the Dharma Centre like you would greet Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Doesn't mean prostrate to their feet, you know, they feel rather awkward. But hold them dear to your heart and so precious, like you would be very attentive. If Lama Zopa Rinpoche was here, you'd be very respectful, right? So they say that everyone who comes to the Dharma Centre is the pause, the students are the pause of of the guru. In other words, see them as other emanations of the guru. Even the lama's dog or any other pet animal. I don't know if they qualify as pets when they're the lama's dogs, but I think they're sort of I wouldn't know. There's some functioning on some other level. That's what I mean to say. I mean, Lama Yeshe always had dogs, and Lama Zopa, I remember being over there when Om Mani Padme Hung, Mani for short, when she was in her last weeks of her life, and she had Lama Zopa Rinpoche in her ears all the time, and dog, right? And sometimes Buddhas manifest as dogs, as we know with Maitreya, you know, seeing Arya Sangha, seeing Maitreya as a dog, you know, and then by purifying, by his great compassion, purifying the obscurations, and kaboom, Maitreya right in front of him, even then he didn't believe it and said, prove it. Whoa, way to go. Okay, so even when we see faults in others, we should remind us these are conditioned phenomena. It's the condition of existence that you're going to be propelled by desire. I mean, the reason the birds got a bird rebirth was because of their strong attachment. Their strong, you know, attachment. You see it. Food, you know, that bush turkey that was just there. Desperation. And we all feel like, oh gosh, it's starving. It's not starving. They're not starving. We've been told, we've got some bird experts here. So they're definitely not starving. But some of us think they are, especially when the cafe closed down. The bush turkeys certainly told us they were starving. But they do the rounds of the nuns' huts as well. And so do all the other birds. And so we know they're getting a good feed. And then they go up to Venerable Pende. And then now they go down to the cafe because they're going to get cake. All right. So because they're conditioned phenomena, just like in our own minds, they can be eliminated, eradicated. In other words, there's hope for us, but there's hope for them as well. So we don't have to fix others in a box. We know we don't like to be fixed in a box. Oh, you're always angry, stubborn, this, that, label, label, label. No, not always. And those of us as Dharma practitioners who've been working on those afflictions, that comes up in the next verse. I was hoping to get to number 4 today. Do you think I'm failing? Yes, we won't get to 4. We might get to 3. Okay. When we see the faults in others, we remind us they're conditioned, you know, and for ourselves, at least, where it does link into number 3, we can eradicate them. We can eradicate them. We know it's hard, but we have all the methods available to us. We have those all presented to us. Fantastic. We just got to identify and apply the right antidotes. So by practicing pure perception, we have an attitude of respect with our body, physical body. You know, just like when Geshe comes in and we all stand up very respectfully, and hopefully people keep quiet and stop their conversations. I mean, that's the idea, right? We're here for the teachings, right? And then, you know, offer our minds to the Dharma in service of the Guru, but in the service of others. How can I help you? Well, I used to just be so amazed. You know, the previous abbot of Kopan, Ken Rinpoche, Lama Lundrup, he would like appear out of nowhere. And he'd either go, don't worry, be happy. And so you just smile and relax. Or it'd be like, you have a question? Can I help? Lama Zopa Rinpoche. It's like that all the time. Amazing. So we don't be putting our hands out like that because we're not supposed to. Us as Sangha, you know, disturb the beings around us. Sorry for all your beings who are disturbed by my presence. How can I benefit? Even more so, we practice with each other. Let's face it, we're all about the same thing, right? We all want the same thing, not just to be happy, but wanting the Dharma, wanting to know about how to engage in transforming our minds, engaging in the Bodhisattva practices, becoming a Buddha and so forth. Yeah, we all want that. That's why we're here, right? So cultivate this amongst ourselves, you know, amongst those of us, each other, who are on the same trajectory, right? Who have the same goal, Buddhahood. Even as Buddhists, you know, we've gone for the great scope, you know, as our practice. And we want to cultivate bodhicitta. Not only that, but we're all followers of Lama Tsongkhapa. You know, the Gelug teachings based on these profound Kadampa teachings, and then Lama Tsongkhapa coming along and drawing it all together and making it very expansive for our minds. So we're all following the Buddha's teachings. We have the common humanity. We're all human beings. We all have all the understanding of all the human beings. We have minds that we can work with. We are sentient beings, and all those other beings are sentient beings as well. So we find the ways that we can look at not the faults of others that we've been doing since beginningless times, but finding the opposite, their good qualities, more and more. So if we do the thing of fault finding and from arrogance and pride, we're always going to be unhappy. We are always going to be unhappy. And this is where the selfish wisdom comes in. This is not even thinking, will others be unhappy? Most certainly. Just ask anyone you've ever picked out the faults in, how happy that made them. And if we're working for the happiness of others, we're not doing the right way. Okay. So even when we have to correct others, we still do that with an attitude of respect. You know, I think it's been interesting during the teachings during this week and maybe the last few weeks of Geshe Tsultrim seems to be giving the Sangha their advice via the teachings to everyone else. He has witnesses.
Very skillful.
Very skillful. Not directly, not, I've been meaning to tell you, Turkey, for quite some time. No, not like that. Just, you know, does it very skillfully, kindly. Because why are we doing that? As Venerable Wongmo was saying, when you see the greed in somebody, of course, you're not going to say, stop, if they can't. But if you can help. Well, I was just trying to think what that ad on the radio used to be for Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't have a problem, I don't have a problem, I do have a problem, or something like that. What was it? You know, that it's sort of like if someone's ready to hear that, but you don't know, or at least I don't, I have no clairvoyance, a Buddha knows what someone's ready to hear when. And I always think about that when, you know, the lamas, as I said, Geshe Tsultrim doesn't come up and say, I've been watching you for a while and I noticed you really do blah, 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 which is not very nice. So how about you change that? Never have I heard that from Lama Zopa. Well, I've never had a close conversation with His Holiness. I've had the great fortune to be close and even serve His Holiness a number of times, but not to, you know, you don't sort of hang out and say, oh, by the way, now that I have your undivided attention, because you don't. You're there merely to serve and zip the lip. Anyway, so, but with, you know, Lamas I always think, no, they never do that. So if we want to follow the right way, we're following in their footsteps and doing it as they do, which is only, I mean, those of you who have met your lamas, don't you only, or even observing like His Holiness online or Lama Zopa online or whoever, other teachers, you know, don't you ever only feel that you're valued and appreciated? I think so. Julie's saying, I know, you wanted to say? You want to raise a question? Yeah.
Well, just, so it's about not offering advice, but waiting for somebody to ask.
Yes,
advice.
Not offering advice, but waiting for someone to ask. In fact, in the Dharma, I mean, this is like, for the Dharma, we say as Buddhists, being a Buddhist is being an inner being. It's not going out there trying to convert everybody else to Buddhism and saying, have I got the advice for you that's going to save you from all this suffering? Well, you could say, well, actually, the Buddha, all that advice is there, but people aren't ready to hear it, right? Necessarily, or not wanting to hear it. So then once invited, we can give whatever advice. And if there's someone close to us, we can give it in a way that we know, or someone we're familiar with. They don't be close to us, but we're familiar enough to know, how can I put that in a way that they can hear? And that's developing the skill of a Buddha, of knowing, you know, where people are coming from, or what their level is, or so forth, like a child or whatever. So like that. So yes, it's looking for the opportunities when we can. As I've said, you know, my mother, when I was caring for her at the end of her life, so I was living with her in her Catholic village. And one day her neighbour came into her, my mum told me after, she said, oh, so-and-so down the road want to know if you've tried to convert me yet. And thankfully for me, my mother she said, oh, and I told her no, she doesn't ever talk about it unless I ask a question, and then she just answers the question. Well, sure enough, she asked me one time, what did Buddhists think about death? And I thought, finally, I get the opportunity to say something. I thought I better not make it too weird. So I stuck to, well, I had the opportunity that she had experienced the death experience a few times already. She'd done a few practice runs over the years, so I could recall to her mind what she had said about those experiences. And I knew where it sat within the, you know, dissolutions. So I could do like that. So you use this sort of skillful way, but it doesn't always work, you know. Sometimes you think you're being skillful and it's not. But that's okay. You give it a go. You give it a go. You do what you can. And we get better at it by our practice. Okay, Julie. There is the I coming through though, isn't it? And karma of that person being annoying due to your own past imprint of annoying. Exactly. You are so right, Julie. Yes. So if we can, I mean, I don't know about you, Julie, you sound like quite an advanced practitioner, to be able to, in the moment, nip it in the bud and go, oh, this is my past negative karma ripening and this person being annoying. I mean, wouldn't it be great if we could just do that all the time? But I'm not at that level. But it is a way to think and train ourselves of thinking. Even afterwards, we go away annoyed and you just go, hold on, relinquish. That's some karma ripening. Great, great.
So I did it once, the next day, not in the spot.
Venerable Wongmo said she did it once the next day, not on the spot. But you did it the next day. You did it before you died with that negativity on your mind that by then would have escalated because you're still alive. How much longer later? How long ago was that?
Weeks.
Weeks, right? So weeks, it would have multiplied by then. Here you are still alive. And so, yeah, because isn't it true that they give us the opportunity that instead of, these annoyances that arise in our mind, instead of them festering and making us ill physically and emotionally, mentally, we can purify it. Okay, Julie, isn't it the Guru's, if you can unmute yourself and talk if you want, talk in real time, but I will read this. Isn't the Guru's place to skillfully correct behavior in the student, e.g. greed in this instant, and if that greedy person isn't ready to know their greed? I rejoice that you read Lama Zopa's Kadampa teachings, because she said she read it. Yes, if the greedy person isn't ready to know their greed, well, I guess the Guru would know that. And this is a good point you make, because yes, they point out our faults. They do point out our faults at times. They say when peaceful methods don't work, you've got to use more wrathful ones. Well, clearly, I need more wrathful ones. I've had a few, I wouldn't say instances. I'd say more than that. Okay, yes. I mean, it's for our benefit, right? To point it out. Just like a mother with a child who's running out on the road is not going to go, oh, darling, I think it's not a good idea for you to be on the road. She's going to, with great love in her heart, get off that road, isn't she? It's going to sound like anger, but it's not anger, is it? At all. She knows she has to get the attention right now. She can see you're in danger. Like that. Our Lama sees in incredible danger and have to get our attention sometimes very strongly. Tetsuma Tenzin Palmo, she talks about encaving in the snow. I don't know if it's in the movie, but it's in the book. It was Vicky McKenzie wrote the book, but it was about her. And she talks about, she was, doing that very long retreat, 12 years. And then she'd be outside and looking after the veggie garden and so forth during the break time and, growing the veggies. And she said one time she was out there in the garden and she heard this voice saying, I think it'd be a good idea to step aside. She ignored it. And the voice got a bit stronger. It'd be really good if you stepped aside right now. She ignored that. And then it was like, step aside. And so she jumped to the side and an avalanche came down. So she tells that story. Now, where that voice came from, I can't tell you, her guru, whatever, her lama, because we do hear those stories. But it's that thing that we need to get, somebody needs to get our attention. So here, these people who have our attention, from the depths of my heart, hold others dear and supreme, most precious. I think that's what's hiding behind. No, it's hiding in a different version. Most precious, most dear, just like we have the precious jewels or the precious being. You are a most precious. I mean, you have the karma to be a sentient being in this southern continent, if you're going to look at the Abhidharma, but in this world, we can even say in Australia and Queensland, in my instance, mostly at Chenrezig Institute, no matter what being it is. When I walked up the path then, teeny tiny little worm. I thought, phew, I didn't tread on that one. I was so rejoiced that I didn't tread on it. I'm sure it was rejoicing too, even more than me, went around. So we delight in when we are mindful. Okay. All right. Anything else coming up? So we can at least get started on the next verse. Then I can give you some homework, can't I? For tomorrow. Okay, so verse 3. In all actions, I examine my mental continuum, and the minute a delusion arises, it's interesting. I'll read the other version in a minute because this one has changed in the two translations we have just from 2016 till now. In all actions, I examine my mental continuum, and the minute a delusion arises, since it endangers myself and others, I forcefully confront and avert it. So the previous one, vigilant. So vigilance being replaced. Vigilant. Replaced with, I examine my mental continuum. I like vigilant. It sort of feels strong to my mind. So you just work with the words. Vigilant, the moment, this says the minute. It's probably correct for the Tibetan, corrected, the minute a delusion arises. But I like the moment. It's shorter than a minute. So a minute can be a long time with a delusion in the mind, isn't it? Very long time. By then, could be... Start with a minute. I rejoice that you're starting with a minute. I probably have to start with more minutes than minutes. Appears in my mind. A delusion appears in my mind. A delusion arises. I think arises better than appears. Arises. It emerges out of the space of the mind, which, remember, is space. The delusion is not solid concrete. It is a manifestation of space, but it's a manifestation of space that's got it all wrong. Well, not the space has got it all wrong. Our mind's got it all wrong. We've over-exaggerated the mind of attachment has become greed, the deliciousness of the object of our attachment, or we've over-exaggerated the negative qualities of the one of aversion, our anger, the flip side, you know, the two things, the main ones that propel us because we get it all wrong based on our root confusion, ignorance, the ignorant mind that is not in sync with reality, with how things are. You know, when we talk about being in the zone or like that, it's when you're in sync with reality. It's like with nature, with everything, you know, you're attuned to things as they are, even you can't necessarily conceptualize that or something. I think you're onto something. The minute a delusion of mine, I shall confront and avert it. Forcefully, that's been added in. Forcefully. Since it endangers myself and others, and I'm trying to do the opposite, to not endanger others, not cause harm to others. I mean, the basic teachings, all the teachings of the Buddha come down to those two things. Do no harm, ahimsa. Do no harm, isn't it? I mean, Gandhi made that very popular as a concept, not just as a concept, as a practice, and quite austerely, with huge ethical conduct. And the philosophical view of dependent origination, so unique to the Buddha, this combo of the different levels of dependent origination, that everything arises in dependence on causes and conditions. This comes back to what Julia was saying about this is a ripening of my past karma. It didn't come out of nowhere. It didn't, well, I happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. There's no accidents in karma. Absolutely none. There's no coincidences. It is a ripening. It's very individual. It's very hard to look at that. Like I was looking at that poor boy looking at the news about that poor boy in Melbourne. Was it Melbourne or was it Sydney? The one at the shopping centre who got killed by young boys. And on a conventional level, and absolutely that's horrific, you know. They have to be stopped in their tracks, and they have been stopped in their tracks, hopefully. I have to say one thing, weren't the parents amazing? In the midst of their grief, we forgive those boys. We forgive them. They were very clear, we forgive them. To have that forgiveness in the midst, wow, that's powerful. I think they have a faith. I think they're Christian. Because I think I heard them say something Christian. So how powerful was that? But you also, from a karmic point of view, and as difficult as it is for our minds to do this, is not an excuse. But there was obviously karma is individual, it's particular. So there was no mistake about who it was. And it's not about this lifetime. That's from some, who knows how many lifetimes previously, ripened in that moment, because you sort of can't conceive it. I was like, but why? Why did they do it? It makes no sense, is it? The only way it makes sense is that it's some karma ripening. It's the only way, even without, karma's so hidden, how can we know? In a conventional sense, it absolutely makes no sense whatsoever. Apart from the fact that then there were riots afterwards. I think maybe it's a very angry neighborhood, or the kids are very angry, or whatever. There's something that seems to be pervasive there, which is also a karmic thing. So we have great, 13-year-olds. I just think about, the people we see in prison. I just say, oh, you're setting yourself up for a lifetime of in and out of institutions. This is not good. And of course, I don't know their backstories either, So anyway, you can't really judge on that level, although many people will, on a conventional level. But just think, the disturbances of their mind, just like with the greed, but the disturbance of their mind to cause that act, and the delusions. And then we've got to say, I'm at that risk. I'm at exactly that risk if I don't, the moment or minute or whatever, a delusion arises in my mind, apply mindfulness. be mindful. I've got to be mindful before the delusion arises. Because by the time the delusion arises, my mental quiescence has been well and truly disturbed already, isn't it? And then if I'm in a negative state of mind, I can't even help myself, let alone help anyone else. So how's that a bodhisattva training? How's that cherishing others? It's totally antidotal. So rather than practice the wrong behavior, what I have to do, and I'm sort of running out of time runs ahead. Anyway, we'll continue on this one tomorrow because this is a huge one. You know, the 84,000 afflictions that arise in our mind, of course, it can be all boiled down to the root ignorance, but the main ones we're dealing with is the mind of attachment and the mind of aversion propelling. And of course, you know, we call that, and the mind of ignorance, which is opposite to the wisdom that's in sync with reality, this mind of confusion that just sort of totally confused and gets it all wrong. We call them the root poisons because they totally poison our mind. They totally make it crazy, make it deluded. I'm looking for the, we have these sheets on the afflictions. Well, it's not just the afflictions, it's on the, I think, Buddhist psychology of the mind, Buddhist models of the mind. It's not the comprehensive. I did a cut and paste, and then I look afterwards. I thought, oh, well, I did that in a very creative, in other words, slightly confusing way. But really, what I want you to look at is the first, you know, have a read today, tonight. Anyway, before tomorrow morning, if you haven't already, about the non-virtuous mental factors, that whole section. So the primary ones, and then the 20 secondary afflictions, knowing that this is all a summary of 84,000 afflictions, of which there's 84,000 antidotes, which was the 84,000 teachings of the Buddha. Now, can we name all those 84,000, either on the affliction side or on the antidotal side? No. And nor do we need to really, because if you look at this, you see that the secondary ones actually stem from these three. So if we really focus on those three, we're going to whittle away all the ones that come subsequently. So we'll have a look at that in the morning. We got up to number 3, but I can't say we finished number 3. So then, thinking this morning, how precious, how dear, how wonderful to have this time, even we had a slight hiccup, in which point of time I was like, oh, so now it's going to be bye-bye to the people at home Zooming in and YouTubing in. But we managed to overcome that obstacle, so we can rejoice in that as well. This must be training for our mind. Take every moment as training for the mind. Be mindful, be aware. In other words, be mindful with a positive aspiration, because, I mean, mindfulness is a factor of the mind that's neither virtuous nor non-virtuous. It is there, but we use it for virtue. In other words, take every opportunity to be a benefit to others as we go about our daily business. So rather than being self-absorbed in it's all about me, open the eyes, look out in the world, you know. So may we do that more and more on our path to becoming courageous bodhisattvas on the basis of love, compassion, caring concern for others, gradually extending that as much as we can to embrace more and more beings in our, even in our visualization, make it more expansive in our mind, so that ultimately we become a Buddha for the benefit of all beings without exception. And whatever bodhicitta, mind of enlightenment that has arisen, may it continue to grow and grow. May that not yet arisen, may that not yet arisen, arise in my own mind, in the mind of all beings. Thank you very much for today. I hope you get to enjoy His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Well, I mean, we always get to enjoy the Holy Dalai Lama, but whether you view it now, know that, you know, we're hopefully, all conditions being good, going to be joining here together in half an hour to watch His Holiness. Okay, see you in the morning. Or if you want to unmute and say goodbye, please do. Come up, gang. Come up, gang, who are here, and say hello, goodbye. Hello.
Bye.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Virginia.
Hello.
See you soon.
Hello, everyone.
I
Thank you.
won't see you on the camera.
See you.
See you.
Claire.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, you're back to front. We're looking at a mirror image of ourselves, which is weird. Oh.
Hello, Yasmin.
We're in the gallery.
Okay.
Mirrors.
Bye.
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 Yeah, bye. Bye-bye.